Steve Miranda here with Senior Living Foresight, and I'm talking to Monica McAfee? McAfee, just like the software stuff, right?
Not related whatsoever, but yes.
Yeah. So I'm going to give a little bit of background on why we're doing this interview. A few weeks ago, I did an interview with Jasmine Becker, who is your life enrichment manager at Knox Village in Pompano Beach. And it came up in the conversation that she had a team of 6 people, right? Working under her, and that's just independent living. And then you've got more activities directors than more activity staff or life enrichment people for your health center, for your assisted living and health center. And yes. So my next question being sort of the rude interviewer, so I said, so you have a degree, right? And she said, yeah. And I said, and you make a reasonable amount of money? And she said, I make a good living. And all of a sudden it was like, this is amazing, because mostly our life enrichment people don't make a lot of money. And frankly, they don't have much of a seat at the table in leadership. And in fact, just this last week, I've gotten messages and seen postings in a number of places on LinkedIn, or by a number of people on LinkedIn, where they're talking about how corporate level and regional level activities people are being laid off as a way to contain costs. And it really kind of drives me crazy, because I think life enrichment is ultimately the only thing we have to sell. And so in that context, I said, oh man, I got to talk to somebody in your leadership about how you guys came about making the decision to invest that much money in your life enrichment. So let's start by reminding people how big your community is, and then I'm going to let you talk.
Sure. So it's actually Jamison Becker, and she's our life enrichment. It's okay. Everyone calls her Jasmine, and I get called Marcy, so it's all good. We answer to anything with J or an M.
Yeah, but I just interviewed her. I'm still so guilty.
So we're located in Pompano Beach, Florida. We're 4 miles from the Atlantic Ocean, in between Delray Beach, Hillsborough, Lighthouse Point, and Fort Lauderdale. So we're in a really prime location. It's kind of an underdeveloped area. It's kind of going through a renaissance. We are the 2nd largest life plan community in the state of Florida, the only life plan community with a greenhouse concept for our skilled nursing. And we serve about 1,000 residents, and we employ about 860 plus team members, some of those being per diem related to home health, which is actually a subsidiary of who we are as Knox Village. But so we have, some per diem staff. And I think your question, Steve, about the value that life enrichment and lifestyle plays for a community is critical. And for us, we really perceive that as a critical part of our value proposition. And Jerry Stryker, as our CEO, and our board has always been committed to fitness and well-being. And then we went through a big pricing and positioning analysis back in 2015. And then we went through a positioning, experience, and design session with this great group that was completely out of the realm of anyone you would ever work with, for example, in this space. So what we determined, if you looked at our website, we just looked like everybody else. However, we didn't feel like we were like everybody else. And then we went through this almost a discernment of understanding, a SWOT analysis, if you will, of what we're doing well, where we have opportunity. But the real crux of how we are positioned is based on the fact that we are committed to bringing our brand to life. And I don't say that lightly. Our brand, our tagline is where possibility plays. And where possibility plays is in every aspect of your life, no matter where you are in your life. So we have been committed all along in achieving that for our residents. So we are committed to hiring a professional staff, and we have made really significant investment in the quality and caliber of our programming. So for example, just as this all came together with COVID, we have, and Jamison may have mentioned it to you, is we modeled an arts festival that we started doing in North Carolina, where I came from, called Arts Age, and we expanded that here. It's based on a program that you see in Charleston, South Carolina, the first week of May, called Spoleto. So it's a celebration of the arts and the humanities, and we went from a 1-week celebration to an entire month-long celebration. And literally at the onset of COVID, we had to cancel that entire month of events where we were working with international world-renowned performers through different partnerships and affiliations with museums, as well as the Venetian Art Society, Fort Lauderdale Art Museum, Nova Southeastern University. So all of those programs had to be canceled, and we had to reinvent. And everyone's using the word, and it's so true. You know, we had to pivot. What were we going to do to meet the needs of our residents, and how were we going to continue to encourage interaction, socialization, higher level critical thinking, because people were physically isolated. So how were we going to achieve that? So that's what we very conscientiously set forth to do. So we created life enrichment at home. And we went into go mode with our own internal video department and created new resident orientation, meditation, mat yoga, chair aerobics, Pilates, stretch, better balance, TED Talks, intros for TED Talks. And then for many of our residents who still hadn't taken the plunge into use of technology, how were we going to teach them that this was really going to be the only way that they could stay connected? So we have someone on site who's, again, part of that life enrichment team that's solely focused on technology. So we've been able to respond to that. I could just go on and on because I just get really excited about this.
So I guess the question, I want to actually come back and talk about money for a minute, because this is really, to me,
Sure.
both, it's a two-part question. It's a philosophy question and it's a money question. But at a time where it seems as if most communities, forgive me, those of you who are watching and listening to this that I'm about to insult, but it seems like most communities see life enrichment as kind of this cost center that's a necessary evil, and you have 6 people, and so plus really you have 10 people in your life enrichment for 1,000 residents, more or less, right?
We have about 10 people. So you have Meaningful Life, which is the area that's taking care of and providing life enrichment to everyone in assisted living and what you would traditionally call skilled nursing and memory care, which we don't talk about. And we don't say the F word, and we don't even say the R word. So it's about community. So it's our perspective on village. So yes, we have made a very big investment on that. The other part of it, and you hear it all the time, we're taking down the silos. We literally have removed the silos. So the level of programming that we're doing for independent living is really thoughtfully replicated in all those other levels, traditional levels of care. So if you're doing Arts Age Spoleto for independent living, you're doing it for everyone on this campus. So yes, we made a very thoughtful, conscientious effort to fund and invest in this area because we are leading with lifestyle. We know and we feel as though, for example, at Knox Village, we're here 53 years. The cornerstone of our business for many years, of course, has been grounded in our exceptional healthcare. Then to compound that, we're the only life plan community using the greenhouse model of care. So in one of those tenets of the greenhouse philosophy, it's deep knowing. It's knowing what our residents want. It's knowing what our independent living residents want. So we know from a sales perspective, so this is how you can correlate that investment. What's your ROI? Your ROI is that you're hovering between 91 and 92% census because you're offering an attractive lifestyle that people are willing to pay a premium price for. And also note that we've seen there's a correlation to the lifestyle programming that we're providing to our age of entry. So we've watched our age decline to hovering between, we were at an all-time low of 76, as opposed to what you'd see in the industry of 82 to 84 to 86. So we've really increased the ability to attract a younger clientele. And that, I really think a big part of it is based on the lifestyle programming.
When I look, we're in looking at the world of CCRCs in terms of both entrance fees and monthly fees, where do you sort of land on the scale from really high to the cheapest you can find?
Let me tell you, for me, I made this move from a very lovely community in lovely Charlotte, North Carolina, and I just felt like there was so much opportunity at John Knox Village because it provides really kind of something for everyone. We're a very unique community. So we can have an entrance price point of about $157,000. And as we're scaling 150 apartment home expansion, where we'll go up to a high for the penthouse for just under 700,000. So we really have something for everyone. And that's the other thing that I think it's unique and it's related, is that there really is something for everybody, because then that lower price point for the entrance fee correlates directly to the monthly service fee. So again, how are we responding to that younger demographic that may continue to work? Where do I have purpose with the paycheck? And where am I continuing to work? And I know that I'm going to have this income. So our finance folks have been really flexible in understanding our prospects. So I think that's another attribute as to why we're garnering a younger demographic to come to John Knox Village.
So have you found that in order to fund all this, by usual standards, extra life enrichment staff, that you've had to cut back in other areas, food or landscaping or other things?
Kind of the contrary. It's
Okay.
I feel like everyone is making an investment. I'll be transparent. We're a very unique community in the sense that we're a standalone, single site community. We did all kinds of studies to understand our infrastructure. We've been in an A- Fitch rating. We were really healthy financially. We also identified that in order to grow, we needed to increase our platform with more residential units. So again, we've made a very conscientious effort. So we've invested in dining. We're really in the things that we know long-term will get us to that 94, 95, 96% census and help us fill the expansion sooner. So I can't honestly say where we've cut back. The one thing that we've had to do, and this is kind of paradigm, is that we've had to encourage the residents to understand that there is an assigned value to some of the programming that we're bringing. And in order to do that, then there are programs that we will charge for. So this Venetian art series that I mentioned, a resident pays $25 and they see a world-class performance. We've had people who are performing at the Metropolitan Opera and all around the world perform here. So where else could you get that for $25? Plus enjoy some refreshments, because we elevated the hospitality piece. So it's more of a break-even proposition for us and maybe a little bit of a loss, but it's worth the investment for us. So then it's the choice of the resident. And once again, that's what it's really all about at the end of the day. Now, the big thing that we're trying to do, and I think this is a challenge for everyone in this industry, is understanding those percentage of people who don't engage. Who are the people who are really not engaging, and why? Why are they not engaging? Is there a way, if we bring programming to them in a different way, in a different format, and that's what we're learning through this whole COVID experience, to kind of reach those non-traditional users, because that's really our goal, because you want to keep everyone engaged. But there'll also always be a group of people who will never engage, no matter what you do, no matter where you offer bingo, how. I always say we're so much more than bingo, but for many people, bingo is really important to them. So we're trying to kind of meet everybody where they are.
Yeah, I know there's sort of a sort of some derision about the three B's, right? Bible, bingo, and birthdays. But the truth of the matter is, for some people, those things are really, really important, and so it has to be the three B's plus, not instead of. Might change in another generation.
Exactly.
I don't know. But I really appreciate that you're working on saying, how do we get the unengaged engaged? And I know there are always going to be some people who are going to make the choice to not be engaged. But I so often talk to communities where they talk about the unengaged, and their response is, what are we going to do about it? And I think the goal of every community should be to have 100% engagement, knowing you're never going to quite get there. But ultimately, what we sell is an antidote to loneliness, and it looks different for different people, and that's what you have to recognize and figure out how to do that. So just walk me quickly through the different staff positions you have in your engagement, because I know I'm going to get asked.
Sure, no, it's fine. So we have our life enrichment manager, and I very intentionally hired from outside the industry. Jameson has an incredible hospitality background and large-scale event planning. So I encourage my colleagues out there to look for people who've been in the meeting planning space or kind of banquet, special events, and are still so aware of what the cultural opportunities are. So I wooed Jameson away from taking a position at a nearby university. And I really think that the opportunity then is incumbent upon us as leaders to identify that talent and cultivate that talent, because these are our future leaders, So I'm in an organization where we're always looking, what's our succession plan? How are we growing and developing talent? And, I see Jameson as one of those really key people. And I see the members of her staff doing that. So then we have two people right now working in production. So we have a production manager. So unlike many communities that I've experienced, we are not relying on our operations team to set up or strike events. We are making those logistics a really integral part of how we know that we can provide a superior experience, because we kind of know how walkers need to be moved, or, we're really thinking about that. And there's a higher level of a technical grasp of understanding technology, because technology, as we've learned through all this COVID, is so critical. So there's two people on that team. And then we have an unfilled part-time position there. And then we have someone who kind of does all that reception piece, making sure that reservations are being taken care of. And we recently went from the really fundamental basic reservations to using technology, JKV Connect, which is a care merge product to help us with that. And then we have two additional life enrichment coordinators. And kind of a division of labor on that is looking at kind of the arts and the humanities, and then looking at lifelong learning and really understanding their strengths and what they bring to the table for that. So that's that team. And then we have a Meaningful Life manager, and there's a phone ringing in the background.
Yeah.
My Meaningful Life.
We have lots of that
these
days. So
I know it's just, I don't have a dog that's going to jump in my lap any moment, but that, if I were home, maybe. But so we have the Meaningful Life manager, who's kind of then working in tandem with that other the life enrichment manager, where we're kind of like making sure those programs kind of match. We have themes that we're all working towards, that if we've got a great speaker on campus for IL, that they're going to be there for assisted living or what have you. And then there's, then you have compliance. So you have to make sure in that arena that you're completing care plans and keeping everything, keeping all of your logs and your paperwork, so that you can, meet the needs of the required needs of that area as well. And then we have a spiritual life leader and a spiritual life coordinator, if you will. There's a whole thing about vernacular, typically known as a visitation chaplain. However, again, elevating that role, because that person needs to be able to tend to the residents that are interested in that, and that we, again, also want to be very diverse in how we are bringing that level of programming. So it's not just Bible study. It's, thoughtful intellectual conversations about different things related to faith or interfaith practices. And then, so spiritual life, meaningful life, life enrichment, and fitness. So that's all under this umbrella as well. So here's fitness went from doing, talk about meeting people where they are. You know, we were doing things outside. We were doing things in front of different buildings. So those people that would normally ever walk in, grace the doorway of the fitness studio, they're out front doing chair aerobics. Or it's really been, that's been really incredibly fun to watch, and very, very, I think our fitness director or manager feels really, really proud of that. And also being in smaller group settings where you can still practice the physical distancing. So they essentially increased the amount of classes that they were doing because of the frequency of having to, you know, meet smaller classes.
Well, I think you may be the only community, certainly the only one I know of. There may be some others, but you're the only community I know of any place in the country who continued to do some classes. And of course, you had the benefit of the weather, right, in Florida, but you continued through all of this to do small classes outside, and that is just really, really cool.
Well, I don't know if you got to see any of the video, but we can send you some really awesome video links. And like, I'd be walking around because we're on a 70-acre campus. So if I'm running to and from a meeting, I can't tell you how many times I just pulled out my phone and I'm like, oh my gosh, Eric's leading a meditation and intention class, and it was outdoors, and it's very powerful, and it's very rewarding. And I can't tell you, even honestly, our residents, a group of residents raised money and took full-page ads in the Miami Herald and the Sun Sentinel that serves the Fort Lauderdale market, and our local little Pompano Pelican, to thank the administration, the board, and the staff for the experiences that they've had. And I think that's pretty powerful stuff.
I'm so impressed by what you're doing, except that it feels like what's hard for me is it seems like what you're doing ought to be the norm instead of the exception. And I don't quite understand why that's the case.
Well, I will tell you this, it really took the commitment of the board and of Jerry and his leadership to make this commitment. I mean, it really is a commitment on their behalf, and it's an investment. So I think that they recognize that this investment would ultimately provide the return that we need in order to continue to remain relevant and viable. And we all ask ourselves, because we're not too far off from the 62 age, yeah, right? To say, would we move in? Would we move in? You know, like, it's like, oh, if your checkbook's on the table, would you write that check? Yeah. So we ask ourselves those questions. And you're right. It would be, it really, I would love to see this as the norm in the industry, because I think it will attract more people. And then the opportunity becomes, then this is where I get excited about the industry, is then how do we start to serve more than that elite 7%? You know, how do we start to serve that 93%, right? That middle tier that is hungry really for this, but may not be able to afford it in a traditional sense. So, you know, those are the other questions we need to ask ourselves. And then we have to figure out who are those strategic partners, traditional and non-traditional, to help us achieve that, because the many organizations can't take that burden on financially. So then who are your partners?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge senior living faces right now is that those of us who are boomers, who are going to be the next wave of consumers, we really hate the idea of living with a bunch of other old people and figuring out how to do what's that?
I completely agree with you.
Yeah. How do we turn senior living? I mean, the problem is that it's senior living, right? So how do we create something that's a community that has all ages in it? We haven't published it, but we've got a story I did, an interview I did. There's a housing company out in New York City called Ollie, and their target avatar is 25 to 40-year-olds, mostly singles, who are up-and-coming professionals but can't really live, can't afford to live in a traditional housing in these really expensive marketplaces. And so they have these little micro housing units. They've got some shared housing units and a lot of activities, a lot of common spaces they're doing. And I look at that and I'm thinking, you know, I'm old enough to qualify to live in a senior living community. I'd rather go live in that place with a bunch of young people who are passionate about life and growing probably than I would in even the nicest senior living community. So so what I can't figure out is why we don't have some of that embedded into a place like Knox Village, right? So you've got some
Well,
of
that's where the opportunity is. And
that's
as
right.
we look at our master plan, we've identified a corridor adjacent to our campus where we could do that. And to me, that's exciting. That's appealing. Yep. That's how do you start to build these other communities where you have this multi-generational experience. And, you know, I'm just like off the record here. You know, I'm living in South Florida. I work where I serve older adults every day. I live in a condo where it's predominantly older adults. You know, I very conscientiously seek out opportunities to be with younger people
Right.
and families. And, you know, I really miss that. And that's kind of a phenomenon in Florida itself. But that to me, that's the wave of the future, is the multi-generational living and figuring out how to navigate that. So that's been another really big emphasis in our life enrichment programming is multi-generational. So that Arts Alliance, we do that with Nova Southeastern University with the college students there. And our residents and the students work together to come up with curriculum. And
that's cool.
Yeah. So we do it on campus at the college, and then we do it on campus here at JKV. And then we're so fortunate, I'm looking out my window, we've got a wonderful Title I Innovation Charter School. So we're really making a conscientious effort to even be inclusive of kids in our neighborhood who would never normally even have the opportunity to be exposed to many of these experiences. So that's part of our mission. So that's really incumbent upon us as well to do that. So I'll move into a community when there's higher education and there's multi-generation and maybe it's a little more affordable, and that it gives me a lot of flexibility because I want to travel and I want to reinvent myself. So that's another project we're working on, which I'd love to talk to you about. We're building this Village Vita, where we're working with Ryan Frederick, and we did a retreat with our board, and so we did this analysis of our life enrichment programming, and then we're trying to figure how do we bring that to the broader public, because again, there's 93% of the population that will never move to JKV, but they're trying to figure that out themselves. So it's not a life coach, it's not singularly a life coach, it's not singularly a fitness guru, it's how do you kind of build that whole package. And AARP tried to do it, and I don't think they had the success that they wanted. So we're really trying to do that and using some of the stuff that ICAA has been really successful with. So it's good stuff.
There's so much opportunity to do it better. One of the things you might take a look at if you're not familiar with it, I just stumbled across it a few days ago. I've written an article about it, so it's working its way through, but is the men's shed movement.
Oh, is it kind of like the Minka concept?
No, not at all. So it comes out of Australia, and it came out of a desire to particularly tackle men's loneliness, because men don't naturally socialize the way women do traditionally.
Yes.
And what they're saying is men tend to have conversations side by side rather than face to face when they're working on projects. So it started with somebody taking and building like a wood shop, and where all the older guys would come and they repair things and build things and make things and build relationships. And there are about 1,000 of these things worldwide. It's huge in Australia, pretty big in the UK. New Zealand is big. There are a couple dozen here in the US. But when I saw this, I thought, man, you could take a place like Knox Village and you could set up a wood shop, and you might already have one, but rather than just making it for your residents, you might get open to anybody who wants to come in and use it. And it becomes not only, you know, it makes the world a better place, builds new relationships, and really it would help your marketing efforts because now you've got one more interaction with your local community. So
I love it. I'm going to totally look it up.
so you have
We do have that on campus, but you know, I'll tell you, just sharing with you personally, my dad was a BSN, and he ended up retiring as a hospice nurse. And there is this whole thing about men, and they need that, and they don't want to be part of all of that female energy, and you need to be respectful of that. So my dad, you kind of instilled that in me, and so I kind of keep that in mind. But I love that. I'm going to totally look up the men's shed, and when it's safe for you to travel, we really want you to come visit.
I will do that. I would love to come. I would love to do that. Listen, I got to get to this other call. I appreciate that. I'm sure we could talk all day.
Pleasure.
Thank you so very much for doing this. Have a great day.
Great to see you. Be well. Stay well. It was a pleasure.